But the state of Indiana became the focus of national ire this week after Governor Mike Pence signed a religious freedom bill into law. Denver city government joined several other entities across the country in suspending any travel plans to Indiana. On Thursday, both Arkansas and Indiana offered amendments to each of their religious freedom bills. Patty, this brought back a lot of memories of Colorado and Amendment 2 days when boycotts from around the country around a law. Now, that law was obviously very different than this one, but from those memories and from what you saw this week, what do you think?
Well, first, let's point out that Michael Hancock banned non-essential travel to Indiana. And so that brings up the first question, why are we paying for non-essential travel anywhere, much less to Indiana? And really, what essential travel is there to Indiana for people in Denver anyway? But that's a separate issue. What this also raised was memories of what it was like to be in Colorado over 20 years ago, right after Colorado voters passed Amendment 2, which banned special rights for gays, but essentially stripped them of almost all rights, would have stripped them of almost all rights if it had gone through. The call for a boycott was immediate. It was across the country. It was fraught with as many misunderstandings, really, as what's going on with Indiana and Arkansas, too. And it was a really extraordinary time to be living in a place called the Hate State. And Wellington Webb, who I talked to yesterday, really interesting talking to him about, he went on a national tour to remind people that in Denver, voters did not approve Amendment 2, that voters soundly rejected it here in Denver. He went and saw David Dinkins in New York City and was chased by the lesbian Avengers. He went on Arsenio Hall. He went to the New York Times, which did not buy his argument. But it's a real amazing trip back in the past just to remember what it's like to suddenly be called on to be the victim of a boycott when you might not have had anything to do with what the majority of the rest of the state was voting. So I asked him what his advice would be to the mayor of Indianapolis, and he said, get out there and really disavow the rest of the people who voted for this bill, which they are working to amend pretty quickly in Indiana. So we'll see where that all takes down.
David, there's a lot of discussion nationally between the difference of the law they passed in Indiana, and I know it's been amended just recently, to other religious freedom acts that are in both there's a federal statute and other states. Was there a key difference from the Indiana version and from what we know about now to laws that exist in other states already?
No, it's the Indiana law, when originally acted, was similar to the laws of about 20 other states, and of course, very similar to the federal law we've had since 1993. We see that Mayor Hancock is easily bullied. He was supposed to speak to a gay rights organization several weeks ago, and then some extremist thugs showed up and started yelling, and Mayor Hancock ran away and didn't deliver his speech. And again this week, joins the bullying with a snap reaction that doesn't make any sense unless you're going to ban travel to the entire United States, which has this federal law, as well as to all the other states that have similar laws. Most people in this country understand that when you have anti-discrimination laws, the application of them varies based on the circumstances. So, for example, we ban sex discrimination and race discrimination, and we would say if a gasoline station won't let you buy their products, or an employer fires you or won't hire you on the basis of your sex or race, that's the same. For restrooms, we say segregated restrooms by sex are fine, but we would say segregated restrooms by race are terrible. In the case of discrimination based on sexual orientation, the practical issue that is being fought over is forcing people who have religious objections to participate in somebody else's wedding, as a caterer, as a photographer, whatever. That is a trivial issue in practice, and it is wrong to bully people to participate. We had for a long time the argument, how does my gay marriage threaten or harm anyone else? Well, the answer is when you force somebody to participate in your ceremony over their sincere religious objections. We ought to have the spirit that the gay rights movement came out of originally, which was live and let live. You tolerate me, I tolerate you, and neither of us is going to use the force of law to impose our morality on other people.
Craig, looking at discrimination in any sort of form is always going to be complicated. I'm not going to sit here and say I know any of the answers, but you have a legal background. You've talked about this in a lot of issues. What do you think?
Wow, I think it's an interesting issue, and everybody should have seen the back and forth between David and Mike. I may be talking about it on my radio show, and I'm having Noel Martin on, who's the attorney for Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Bakery. That is what the Indiana law is designed for, to protect Jack Phillips, and I've wrestled with that issue. And it comes down to this. Look, I've never had the pleasure of being invited to a gay wedding, and if I was, I'm almost certain that I would attend. But I wouldn't want the government to tell me I have to attend. Do you know what I mean? So, but the dominant thing here is that Christians are in full retreat. I thought of my buddy Mike Litwin when I saw Mike Pence on with George Stephanopoulos, because he was asked, is this designed to let you discriminate? And he wouldn't answer. He said, George. And then his defense was basically the Hoosier superiority defense. We're so nice. We're Hoosiers. We would never discriminate. All people are equal. Only Hoosiers are more virtuous and nice than anybody else. And it was kind of ridiculous. And I thought of Mike because he coined the phrase, a me KO, talking about Scott McInnes. And Mike Pence, who had serious presidential aspirations, I think he did a me KO this week.
Mike, you've already been quoted and you haven't even had a chance to chime in. What do you make of the arguments around it, and then I guess the amendments we've seen both in Indiana and Arkansas? Obviously, Arkansas didn't have to stem off a travel ban, but there's a little bit different situation there. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm amazed by a couple of things. One is that if you go to Arkansas, which I try not to do, but if you do go to Arkansas, Walmart is the one that stepped up. Walmart, you know, which has been hated by liberals, you know, which liberals won't even allow to come into their city because, you know, more about politics than about big boxing. Walmart steps up and says, this law has to change, and the governor said, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so we have big business suddenly being among the most outwardly out, I guess is the right word, pro-gay organization. This is a Chamber of Commerce issue. They don't want anti-gay laws in theirs. You know, and when, as Craig said, when Mike Pence went up there and was asked specifically whether this law would discriminate against gays, he wouldn't answer the question. Why not? Why wouldn't he answer the question? If this is not meant to discriminate against gays, why wouldn't he answer the question? It was just last year that a court said that that gay marriage was legal in Indiana. This law, if anyone listened for 2 seconds to the arguments made for this law, knows that this was about discrimination. That's why the law was being put in. David says we don't have to worry about gay discrimination, not being gay. I guess he doesn't have to worry about it. Gay people do have to worry still about being discriminated against. It happens all the time. Gays are not a protected class in a lot of places. You can be fired in most states simply for being gay just because your boss doesn't like the fact that you're gay. To suggest that these laws come from their concern about a Colorado baker is absurd. That's not what this law is about, and it's not what it attempts to do.